Today I would like to talk about PlayStation 5 Pro, its potential specs, price and release date. There's a ton of different leaks and rumors surrounding this console, but today I want to focus on more reliable sources, people that were right in the past when it comes to this type of information. And if this information that I'm going to present to you today is anywhere close to be true, well, PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be a beast. Let's look into this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So yes, let's talk about that PlayStation 5 Pro console that is apparently coming next year. And this information is courtesy of Tom Henderson. Yes, the same Tom Henderson that was right in the past when it comes to many things PlayStation, right? So he was right about PlayStation 5 Slim, which is really not a slim model, but new model. He was right about detachable optical drive for that console. He was right about PlayStation earbuds. He was right about that streaming handheld. I forgot how it's called. And I think he was right about some other stuff here and there. So he's got very good sources. So based on that information, I'm pretty sure that PlayStation 5 Pro is in development, that we will actually hear way more about this console very soon, because according to Tom Henderson, first dev kits for that consoles are actually being shipped out. I mean, they have already been shipped out apparently to at least first-party developers. Third-party developers should be receiving first dev kits very soon too. So sooner or later we will actually start hearing more about specs and that kind of stuff, and that's what I really want to talk about today, mainly like the specs, because if these specs that I'm going to present to you today are going to be anywhere close to the real thing, PlayStation 5 is going to be a very powerful console, that's for sure. And by the way, it shouldn't be really that expensive, because I see a lot of people saying that, if you add more compute units and teraflops and everything, well, that will make the console very expensive. Well, not really. I mean, obviously it all depends how powerful you want to make this console, but the way PlayStation is actually planning to make this console, that shouldn't really make that console too expensive, if you know what I mean. So it shouldn't really be that expensive, really. So first off, let's talk about the specs, right? This information is a mixture of information from Paul of Red Gaming Tech and Tom Henderson. So first off, the APU for PlayStation 5 Pro is supposed to be based on 8 Zen 2 cores customized for Sony. So really, this is a similar thing that PlayStation 5 is running on right now. So I don't think that CPU will change. I mean, the concept for PlayStation 5 Pro is very similar to what Sony did with PlayStation 4 Pro. They just basically tweaked the old console a little bit, but enough to actually make it worthwhile. So that's the CPU. Obviously, CPU will run at much higher clock speeds. They talk about, low 4 gigahertz. So, 4.1, 4.2, maybe that would be around 15% increase in terms of speed for the CPU. So it's not really massive difference, especially if that's still going, if these are still going to be Zen 2 cores, but good enough. Like CPU should be fine. Then they talk about RDNA 3 based hybrid with Sony custom tech, such as a geometry engine and stuff. So this is still going to be a lot of custom work that has been made for PlayStation, that has been done for PlayStation 5 will find its way in PlayStation 5 Pro too. Both have to be compatible, of course. But some improvements, like for ray tracing, for example, RDNA 3 has got a second gen kind of this ray core. Well, they're not really cores. They still use the TMUs, but basically ray tracing capability of RDNA 3 is much higher than RDNA 2. So that would improve not just general power of that console, but also, you know, ray tracing capability as well by a big margin. So they are planning 30 work groups, meaning 60 compute units. There's supposed to be 32 of them, so 64 compute units, and 4 of them would be disabled. Standard stuff. I mean, we see that in every single console. Four compute units are disabled on PlayStation 5 too, 4 disabled on Xbox Series X too. You know, this is normal. And but the interesting thing about the GPU is that they say that the GPU clocks would be, you know, up a little bit, you know, would be a little bit higher, anything between 2.5 to 2.8. You know, clocks are not set in stone just yet because, yeah, I guess it all depends on how well the production of these chips is going to go. And, you know, if the quality will be better, then, you know, you will get higher clocks. If the quality will not be that great, well, they will probably stick to like lower clocks. But, you know what, just the, you know, more compute units alone will be a huge boost in terms of performance. And, you know, some RDNA 3 optimizations should help a little bit too. 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, but just running at higher speeds, that would equate to 576 gigabytes per second memory bandwidth. So that's very wise, I guess, right? So that's going to be needed. Also, you know, in order to allow developers to take better advantage of that console and to have more RAM available for developers, they will add 4 gigabytes of DDR4 memory for OS, meaning that the console would run on DDR5 memory, which is fine enough. It's fast enough for the OS and stuff. And, you know, full 16 gigabytes would probably be available for developers. Right now, PlayStation 5, I think, uses 3 or 3.5 gigabytes for OS. So developers have got like 12 or 12.5 gigabytes available for games, right? So that would be additional like almost 3 gigabytes for developers. So that would come in handy for developers for sure. Potentially 2 times Tempest engine performance, I guess. They also talk about TSMC 6 nanometers. Paul from Red Gaming Tech says that he's getting conflicting info, but most likely 6 nanometers. That would make sense because 6 nanometers is actually cheaper to produce, and so they may actually stick to the same process as PlayStation 5 current one. So that's very interesting information, of course. And some people will say, okay, so how will that translate to power, right? And we talking like depending on the clock speeds, right? We're talking about anything between like 20 to 23, 4 maybe teraflops. So that would potentially, at the higher clock scenario, would mean that this console would offer twice the compute power of Xbox Series X. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it would be twice as fast, because same CPU, memory bandwidth is kind of similar to Xbox Series X. So there would be some limitations, but that extra compute power would surely help with higher resolutions, for example, and some other things, right? So let's hope they will balance it out, and hopefully, obviously a lot of will also depend on caches. We don't really know what they will do with caches, so the internal memory for the actual chip and stuff, so L1, L2, L3 cache. So these type of information is very important too. Now I want to show you something real quick, because obviously that kind of power, it would be would be great for games. Now how would that power translate in games? I mean, better graphics, better resolution, you know, 60 frames per second options in games that don't necessarily have 60 frames per second options, right? So that should help. Now, obviously, this console would not help in CPU limited scenarios. I mean, yeah, 15%, 20% boost in terms of performance on the CPU side of things would not really help that much. But still, like I said, it's just like it's a pro model, right? So just like PlayStation 4 Pro, you would get just better looking version of PlayStation 5 games, right? So that's what it is really. Now, as for price, because some people say, oh, that's not possible, like, you know, this console would cost like $1,000 or something like that. I say bullshit to that. Just to, well, show you something real quick. So this is Tech Power Up website, and what you hear is AMD Radeon RX 7600. Now this is on RDNA 3 based GPU. Now it is a little bit different in some aspects, of course. It has 8 gigabytes of memory, 128 gigabytes bus width. Obviously on PlayStation that's currently 256. So I think they would stick to the same on PlayStation, and but some of the specs are very similar. So for example, I mean, you know, teraflops, we're talking about like 20, 21, 22. So in that range, anything between like 20 to 24, I mean, right? But what's interesting is that the clock speeds are similar. So, I mean, base clock, don't look at it. It's just a base clock, but game clock and boost clock, you've got like up to 2655 megahertz, right? So that's a lot. That's, you know, I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but like the leak was talking about like clock speeds up to 2.8, right? So, you know, it doesn't have to be necessarily 2.8. Like if they will find a middle ground, 2.6, 2.7, that should be more than enough for PlayStation 5 Pro. But, you know, so teraflops kind of similar, clock speeds kind of similar. Well, memory is a bit different because bandwidth is lower because of that 128-bit bus. But these cards on PC has got L3 cache, right? So they've got a lot of that. And actually, it's not even that, I think. I forgot how it's called. No, that's actually L3 cache. Was it? I think it is. Anyway, I forgot how's that called on AMD cards. They've got this extra memory, right? And that helps with these cards. Like, I think, yeah, that's the L3 cache, but I forgot. There's a certain name for it, and I keep forgetting how they call it, right? And that extra cache on these cards help with, you know, a lower bandwidth, right? So what I'm trying to say is that, like, yeah, I mean, L3 cache is not going to be there for PlayStation probably, but, you know, PlayStation offers a higher bandwidth, right? So that should kind of level out. So genuinely speaking, you know, we are talking about kind of similar kind of card, right, to what you're going to get on PlayStation, like roughly, right? I'm not saying that it's going to be identical. And now I think the most important piece of information I want to show you is that, okay, so as you can see here, this is produced on TSMC, right? I mean, same thing with the PlayStation. Process size, 6 nanometer, right? So the same as the one that was leaked, because initially I thought that 6 nanometers is actually not enough, is not good enough for like these, you know, these consoles, for these chips. But looks like this particular card, right, the chip for this card, it only takes 204 square millimeters, right? So that's not a lot. So it's actually a small chip, right? So currently PlayStation 5 chip is 380 8 or 6 or 10, something like that, right? In size. Now, obviously, that chip on PlayStation comes with some extra stuff because it comes with a CPU built in, right? So because it's an APU, there's memory controllers and stuff, right? So obviously, that chip for PlayStation 5 Pro would probably be much bigger, but not as big as some people assume. So, like for example, I'll give you an example. Xbox Series X chip is 368, I think, or something like close to that. So I don't really see any reason why on 6 nanometer PlayStation 5 Pro chip would be bigger than Xbox Series X chip. So right, so it shouldn't be really that expensive to produce, if you know what I mean, even on 6 nanometer. So with that, I would say that the price of PlayStation 5 Pro, it's not going to be $1,000. Probably going to be just slightly expensive than PlayStation 5 current one, so maybe $600, $599, and by next year maybe PlayStation will drop the price of the price of a PlayStation 5. Who knows, right? Hopefully at some point they will have to drop prices on these consoles. So we'll see. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, that type of specs would make actually a pretty significant difference in many games. Not only current gen games, but not really next gen, but I'm saying that not only in cross-gen titles that we've seen for the last 2-3 years, but also in a proper next gen games, because especially that as we see with Xbox Series X, next gen games running on next gen engines, they like compute. So the more compute units, the more compute power a console have, the better it runs, because these next gen games will take advantage of a lot of this compute power on both Xbox, PlayStation and Xbox, and PlayStation 5 Pro, right? And yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see if Xbox will actually react to it. I would love see an Xbox Pro, if you know what I mean, but going by the official documentation, unless something changed, looks like we're not going to see one. So it's only going to be PlayStation 5 Pro that we're going to have when it comes to mid-gen refreshes, when it comes to consoles. But anyway, guys, these are just rumors, yes, from pretty reliable sources, because some of that information in the specs we've seen are not only coming from Paul of Red Gaming Tech, but also from Tom Henderson. Like he spoke about the number of compute units that that's Tom Henderson information. Tom Henderson confirmed, if you know what I mean. He spoke about the memory speeds too. So some of that information has been delivered by Tom Henderson, not only Paul. So it's not like, Paul is actually taking that information out of thin air. Also, there's this Aputak, I think his name is, on YouTube, on Twitter, that account. He talks about the APU. I forgot I think it's called Viola or something like that. So I'll probably dig some more about that and let you know. So yeah, guys, that's all interesting information. That's why I said that, I'll be only talking about information provided by Tom Henderson, Paul of Red Gaming Tech, because he's got some good sources too. I'm not saying that he's always right, but so we'll see. And obviously that guy that deals with AMD APUs and that kind of stuff, so he's got some very interesting information there too. So guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. Are you interested in PlayStation 5 Pro? I mean, buying one? Would you like Xbox to do the same or similar thing? Let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, I will see you all in the next one. Take care.